The woman's voice sliced through the Friday afternoon chaos of Whole Foods like a surgeon's blade,
Yes, I'm at the
precise
store
and
now. I'll get the
merciless.
mascarpone and some other
Victoria
cheeses.
Cross stood
Okay,
motionless
see
in
you
the
at home.
cheese aisle, iPhone pressed against her
No,
ear.
sweetie, we can't get
Spanish
that today.
syllables
But I
tumbling from
really
her lips with
want
the
it.
I said
fluency of
no,
someone
put it
who'd
back.
learned the language not from textbooks, but from necessity. The call with her San Antonio partners had imploded spectacularly. $50 million hanging by a thread because some translator at Cross Medical Technologies had butchered technical terminology that should have been straightforward. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed with indifference as Victoria's carefully constructed composure cracked just enough to let poison seep through. Her eyes landed on a man standing near the dairy section, paint-stained jeans hanging loose on his frame work boots scuffed beyond redemption. A young girl sat in his shopping cart legs, swinging with the careless rhythm of childhood strawberry blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail that looked homemade rather than salon-crafted. Blue eyes studied the world from beneath bangs that needed trimming. The Spanish rolled off Victoria's tongue, low but clear, the anonymity of a foreign language her only sanctuary in this moment of weakness. Mira a ese hombre ropa sucia como obrero, la niña vestida tan barata. Seguro no puede pagar una buena educación para su hija, solo compra comida procesada en vez de orgánica. Gente así no entiende el valor de la educación, no sabe cómo criar a los hijos correctamente. The man turned slowly. His expression remained calm, but his eyes dark and intelligent beneath the shadow of fatigue fixed directly on Victoria's face. When he spoke, the Spanish emerged perfect and fluid, carrying the unmistakable cadence of someone who'd lived the language rather than studied it. Entiendo cada palabra que acaba de decir, señora. Y aunque mi hija no use ropa cara, le he enseñado a respetar a todos, sin importar su apariencia, una lección que usted claramente nunca aprendió. Victoria's iPhone clattered to the tiled floor. The screen spiderwebbed instantly fractures, spreading outward like her fragmenting composure. A collective hush fell over the nearby shoppers, that particular silence that follows unexpected drama. The checkout clerk, a teenager whose name tag read Ashley, paused mid-scan. An elderly woman suddenly became deeply fascinated by the nutritional content of mascarpone cheese she'd been ignoring seconds before. The little girl looked up at her father, confusion pulling at her features. "Daddy, what's wrong? What did the lady say?" Marcus Hayes bent down to his daughter's eye level, his voice carrying the gentle patience of someone who'd explained difficult concepts many times before. "Sometimes people make incorrect assumptions about others, Emma. This lady was speaking in Spanish and she didn't realize I could understand her." The girl's face scrunched in thought, processing this information with the serious concentration children bring to adult failures. "Like the kids at school? The ones who laugh because I don't have new shoes?" Her voice dropped lower, barely above a whisper. "Or because I don't have a mom like everyone else?" The simplicity of the observation struck Victoria like a physical blow. She watched Marcus's expression shift, grief flashing across his features before he masked it with a protective smile that looked well practiced. "Something like that, sweetheart. But remember what we always say about assumptions." Emma nodded solemnly, the shadow lifting slightly. "They make a donkey out of you and me." She giggled at the wordplay, clearly a familiar joke between them. Victoria bent down to retrieve her phone, cheeks burning with shame that felt foreign and uncomfortable. The spiderweb of cracks across her screen reflected her fractured composure with brutal accuracy. For a woman who prided herself on perfect control, on always being the sharpest mind in any room, this humiliation tasted bitter and inescapable. "I apologize." The words came out formal, stiff, her voice taking refuge in corporate professionalism. "My call was stressful and I spoke thoughtlessly." Marcus nodded once, a simple acknowledgement that somehow made Victoria feel worse than righteous anger would have. No matching rudeness, no cutting retaliation, just dignity in the face of her pettiness. He turned back to the dairy case, selecting a small block of Swiss cheese and placing it in his cart next to a loaf of whole wheat bread and a gallon of milk. Simple groceries. Honest groceries, the kind that stretched a budget but fed a family. Victoria noticed Emma was still watching her, those blue eyes unnervingly perceptive for a child so young. The girl held a box of store-brand macaroni and cheese, clutching it like treasure rather than staple. "I truly am sorry." Victoria directed the words to Emma this time, needing somehow to undo the damage in front of this child who'd already lost too much. Sometimes grown-ups forget their manners. Emma's face softened slightly, the resilience of childhood asserting itself. "That's okay. Daddy says everyone has bad days sometimes." She glanced at the chocolate cake in the bakery display, then quickly away, but not before Victoria caught the longing in her expression. "Please let me buy the cake for you as an apology." Marcus started to refuse, pride warring visibly with the desire to give his daughter something special. Victoria watched the internal struggle play across his face, the same calculation she'd seen in boardrooms when executives weighed cost against benefit. "Say thank you to Miss—" Marcus raised an eyebrow, realizing they hadn't been properly introduced despite the intimate cruelty of their encounter. "Cross, Victoria Cross." "Thank you, Miss Cross." Emma's voice carried careful politeness, the kind children use when they've been taught manners matter. "The cake looks really good." As they walked toward the checkout together, Victoria found herself studying Marcus from the corner of her eye. His clothes were worn but clean, his posture straight despite whatever burdens he carried. Something about him nagged at her consciousness, something familiar she couldn't quite place. The way he moved, the cadence of his speech when he switched back to English, the quiet confidence that seemed at odds with his circumstances. "Where did you learn Spanish?" "Stanford University. 2 years of postdoctoral research at UT Austin in Hispanic linguistics and Mexican-American cultural communication patterns." Victoria nearly missed a step. Postdoctoral research. The man in paint-stained jeans buying budget groceries had not just a doctorate, but postdoctoral credentials from 2 of America's most prestigious universities. And before that, the question escaped before she could stop it, curiosity overwhelming the professional distance she usually maintained with strangers. Marcus hesitated, clearly weighing how much of his story to share with a woman who'd just insulted him in a grocery store. "I taught university-level linguistics, Department of Comparative Linguistics at University of Oregon in Eugene, specialized in Latino linguistic integration in the American Southwest." The pieces weren't fitting together. University professor to what handyman? The evidence of manual labor was clear on his calloused hands under his fingernails where paint stubbornly clung despite obvious scrubbing. The paint stains on his jeans weren't fashion statements but the honest residue of hard work. At the checkout, Victoria insisted on paying despite Marcus's continued protests. The teenage cashier seemed fascinated by the dynamic between them. Probably seeing all kinds of customers during her shifts, but this particular interaction clearly fell outside the normal spectrum. Victoria handed over her black American Express card, without thinking the same card she used for business dinners that cost more than most people's weekly groceries. She caught Marcus noticing the centurion symbol, his expression unreadable. Outside the store, Victoria hesitated beside her midnight blue Bentley Continental GT. The contrast between her car and Marcus's aging Ford F-150 pickup truck was stark, almost comical, 2 different worlds that had collided in the cheese aisle and somehow found themselves sharing the same parking lot under the fading Portland afternoon sun. "What do you do for work now?" The question slipped out before professional courtesy could cage it. Marcus shifted Emma's hand in his, a protective gesture that didn't escape notice. "I do repair work, handyman jobs, some part-time maintenance at the elementary school." His answer was matter-of-fact, neither apologetic nor defensive. He was what he was, and he'd made peace with it in a way Victoria envied. But she sensed there was more to the story. There had to be. You didn't earn a doctorate in linguistics from Stanford, conduct postdoctoral research at UT Austin, and end up fixing leaky faucets without something significant happening in between. "May I ask what happened?" Marcus was quiet for so long that Victoria began to think he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of old grief, the kind that's been lived with long enough to lose its sharp edges, but never its presence. "My wife Rachel was diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer 3 years ago." She was a microbiologist, brilliant woman. His eyes drifted to Emma, who was carefully examining her cake through the clear plastic container. I left academia to care for her full-time. After she passed 2 years ago now, there were medical bills. Emma needed stability more than I needed a title. Academic positions don't just wait around for you to be ready to return. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the asphalt as Marcus continued. We're doing fine. Emma's school is good. We have a roof over our heads. Some things are worth more than professional prestige. Victoria stood momentarily speechless. The man she had dismissed as beneath her notice had willingly sacrificed a prestigious career out of love. She thought about her own choices, the relationship with her father that had withered while she climbed the corporate ladder, the family events missed for business dinners, the moments lost forever while she built an empire that felt hollow in this parking lot, confrontation with real sacrifice. I have a proposition. The words seemed to come from someone else, someone braver and more impulsive than the Victoria Cross who'd walked into Whole Foods an hour ago. She was improvising now, but the idea felt right. More than right, it felt like redemption. My company needs someone with your language skills, translation work, Spanish contracts, cultural consultation. She was building the framework and real-time experience, teaching her to recognize valuable resources when they appeared. The pay would be significantly better than handyman work. Something flickered across Marcus's features. Not excitement exactly, but something like cautious interest, the look of someone who'd learned not to trust good fortune too readily. What kind of company? Cross Medical Technologies, medical equipment manufacturing based in Seattle. We do substantial international business, particularly in the American Southwest, and with Hispanic-owned companies. She paused, then added with what she hoped was professional confidence rather than pity. The pay would be significantly better than handyman work. You're offering me a job. Marcus's voice carried skepticism. You don't know anything about my qualifications beyond a chance conversation, my work history, whether I'm reliable or competent. I know you're fluent in Spanish with academic expertise in Hispanic cultural communication. Victoria felt her footing become surer as she shifted into business mode. I know you have a doctorate in linguistics from Stanford and postdoctoral research from UT Austin. I know you handled my rudeness with more grace than I deserved. She glanced down at Emma, who was listening to their conversation with the intense focus children bring to adult discussions they don't quite understand. And I know you're raising a polite, well-adjusted daughter on your own. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. The silence stretched between them while Marcus considered. Victoria found herself holding her breath, surprised by how much his answer mattered. This wasn't just about assuaging her guilt over the grocery store incident. This was about second chances and unexpected connections and the strange alchemy that could transform a moment of ugliness into something resembling grace. Daddy was the nice lady offering you a real job. Emma's question cut straight to the heart of everything, the simplicity of childhood cutting through adult complexity. A real job. Not pity, not charity, not a wealthy woman's attempt to buy her way out of an awkward situation. Something real and sustainable and dignified. Marcus looked down at his daughter, then back at Victoria. When he spoke, his voice was steady but cautious. I'd need to know more details. Responsibilities schedule. I have commitments. His eyes flicked to Emma, making crystal clear where his priorities lay. Victoria nodded, understanding flooding through her. She reached into her purse and withdrew a business card. Real paper, real ink, something tangible in a digital world that felt increasingly ephemeral. My direct number. Think about it over the weekend. If you're interested, call me Monday. Marcus took the card, his fingers brushing hers briefly. The calluses were real, the evidence of a man who'd rebuilt his life from scratch, using his hands when his mind couldn't find purchase. Why? The question was simple. The answer was not. Why offer him a job? Why risk hiring someone based on a grocery store encounter? Why trust a stranger with her company's business? Because I think we both need this chance to be better than we were an hour ago. It wasn't a business answer. It wasn't strategic or calculated or designed to achieve maximum advantage. It was simply true. Sometimes the most important decisions weren't made in boardrooms but in parking lots between people who'd seen each other at their worst and chosen to reach for something better. As the pickup truck pulled out of the parking lot, Victoria stood beside her Bentley and realized something had fundamentally shifted. The woman who'd walked into Whole Foods that afternoon, impatient, judgmental, insulated by wealth and status, felt like a stranger. In her place stood someone who'd been forced to confront the ugliness of her own assumptions and found something unexpected on the other side. Her phone buzzed with a text from her assistant, Margaret. Conference call with the San Antonio team in 30 minutes. Are you still at the grocery store? Victoria stared at the message, trying to reconcile the world of international business deals and corporate strategies with the conversation she'd just had. Marcus Hayes, who spoke fluent Spanish and held a doctorate in linguistics but did handyman work to support his daughter after losing his wife, didn't fit into any category she understood. The drive back to her office in downtown Seattle took 40 minutes, but Victoria's mind remained in that parking lot. She thought about Marcus's hands, strong and capable despite the calluses. She thought about Emma's polite thank you and the way she looked at the cake like it was treasure. She thought about university professors who became handymen and the kinds of losses that could reshape a life so completely. Her assistant Margaret was waiting with a stack of papers and a concerned expression when Victoria finally reached her top-floor office. "The San Antonio call is in 5 minutes. Should I reschedule?" Margaret glanced at Victoria's uncharacteristically disheveled appearance, the cracked iPhone screen, the slight flush still visible on her cheeks. It was a reasonable question. Victoria Cross was never late, never unprepared, never anything less than perfectly composed for international business calls. "No, let's get this done." But as she settled behind her mahogany desk and opened the conference call software, her fingers found the edge of her cracked phone screen. The physical reminder of her encounter with Marcus and Emma Hayes, of words spoken in anger and met with dignity, of assumptions shattered and possibilities revealed. The San Antonio team appeared on her monitor, their voices filling her office with talk of quarterly projections and market expansion. Dr. Miguel Rodriguez, CEO of Rodriguez Medical Technologies, led the discussion with the same warm but shrewd manner that had characterized their previous meetings. Victoria participated, asked the right questions, made the appropriate decisions, but part of her remained fixed on the memory of a man who'd chosen grace over anger, who'd turned a moment of cruelty into an opportunity for unexpected connection. When the call ended, Victoria sat alone in her office as the evening shadows lengthened across Seattle's skyline. Her company employed hundreds of people, generated millions in revenue, held patents that advanced medical technology around the world. But somehow, none of that felt as significant as the conversation she'd had with a single father in a grocery store parking lot. She picked up her office phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found the number for Jennifer Wu, her head of human resources. "Jennifer, it's Victoria. I may have a candidate for that cultural liaison position we discussed. Someone with exceptional qualifications who might be perfect for project-based work." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "He's currently between professional positions but has an extensive academic background in Hispanic linguistics and cultural communication. I'll send you his information if he's interested." It wasn't charity, Victoria told herself. It was good business. A man with Marcus's educational background and language skills was exactly what Cross Medical Technologies needed for their expanding Southwest partnerships. The fact that he was struggling financially, that he had a daughter to support, that he'd handled her insults with dignity, those were just context background information that had no bearing on her business decision. But even as she constructed these rational justifications, Victoria knew she was lying to herself. This wasn't about Spanish translation services or Southwest business development. This was about the moment when assumptions collided with reality and created something entirely unexpected. This was about second chances and the possibility that people could be better than their worst moments. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. "Victoria." The voice belonged to her brother Nathan, calling from his office down the hall. "I just got off a follow-up call with the Rodriguez people. They're still interested in moving forward with the merger discussions, but they want someone who can handle the cultural nuances. The language barriers and different business approaches have been causing problems. Victoria felt something click into place like puzzle pieces finding their proper configuration. What if I told you I might have found exactly the right person for that? She was thinking out loud, now the possibilities unfolding in her mind like architectural blueprints. Someone with the academic credentials and cultural understanding to bridge those gaps. You have my attention. Nathan's voice carried interest. The Rodriguez deal could be worth $50 million if we can navigate the communication issues. What kind of background are we talking about? Doctorate in Hispanic Linguistics from Stanford, postdoctoral research at UT Austin on Mexican-American business communication patterns. Victoria realized as she spoke that she was committing to something she couldn't take back. Fluent in Spanish, obviously. Academic experience teaching at university level. Currently available for project work. She was describing Marcus Hayes like a resume reducing their complex encounter to bullet points and qualifications, but that was the language Nathan understood. Sounds almost too good to be true. Nathan's skepticism was audible. What's the catch? It was a reasonable question. In their world, exceptional qualifications usually came with exceptional complications. People with doctoral degrees from Stanford didn't typically find themselves available for sudden project work without some kind of story behind the availability. No catch. I'll know more Monday. After she hung up, Victoria sat in her office as the building emptied around her. Through her window she could see the lights of Seattle beginning to twinkle in the gathering darkness. Somewhere out there, Marcus Hayes was probably helping his daughter with homework, or reading bedtime stories, or doing whatever single fathers did in the quiet hours of the evening. She thought about the cake they were sharing, the simple pleasure of chocolate frosting, and a child's laughter. When was the last time she'd experienced something that uncomplicated? When had she last felt joy that wasn't connected to profit margins or market share or beating the competition? The questions felt dangerous, like examination of a life she'd been too busy living to actually consider. Victoria's phone buzzed with a text from her personal assistant. Reminder dinner with the Patterson Group at 8. Cars waiting downstairs. Another business dinner. Another evening of strategic conversations and careful networking. Another night of playing the role of Victoria Cross, successful CEO, while some other version of herself, the one who'd stood in a parking lot and offered a job to a stranger, remained locked away. She gathered her things and headed for the elevator. But something made her pause at Margaret's desk. Her assistant had left a neat stack of papers for Monday morning along with a coffee mug that read, "World's Most Patient Assistant." The normality of it struck Victoria suddenly. Margaret had worked for her for 5 years, handled her schedule, fielded her calls, managed her professional life with quiet efficiency. But what did Victoria actually know about her? Did Margaret have children, hobbies, dreams that extended beyond organizing someone else's calendar? The elevator descended toward the parking garage where her driver waited with the Bentley. Victoria caught her reflection in the polished steel doors and barely recognized the woman looking back. Same perfectly styled blonde hair, same expensive suit, same confident expression. But something fundamental had shifted behind her eyes. Some certainty had cracked, leaving room for questions she'd never thought to ask. The weekend passed with excruciating slowness. Victoria found herself checking her phone more frequently than usual, wondering if Marcus might call before Monday. She attended her usual charity gala on Saturday night, made the expected donations, chatted with the right people, but her mind kept drifting to a little girl sharing chocolate cake with her father, to paint-stained jeans and careful grocery budgets and the quiet dignity of starting over. Sunday morning she canceled her standing brunch reservation at the Four Seasons and instead drove to a small diner in a neighborhood she rarely visited. The kind of place where families gathered after church services, where coffee came in thick ceramic mugs and pancakes were stacked high enough to satisfy genuine hunger rather than photograph well. She sat alone in a booth, watching parents with children, the easy laughter, the casual touches, the ordinary magic of family life that had somehow passed her by while she built her empire. By Monday morning, Victoria had convinced herself that Marcus wouldn't call. She threw herself into work with unusual intensity, as if the sheer volume of activity could drown out her disappointment. 3 back-to-back meetings, a presentation to the board, a conference call with regulatory officials. The day unfolded in a blur of professional obligations, each minute pulling her further from the possibility that had briefly flickered in a grocery store parking lot. Then, at 2:17 in the afternoon, her direct line rang. The number on the caller ID was unfamiliar, a Portland area code that made her heart rate accelerate in a way that had nothing to do with caffeine or stress and everything to do with possibilities she hadn't dared to hope for. Victoria Cross. "Miss Cross, this is Marcus Hayes. We met on Friday at Whole Foods." The relief that flooded through Victoria was disproportionate to the situation, or maybe perfectly proportionate to something she was only beginning to understand. "Marcus, I'm glad you called." She tried to keep her voice professionally neutral to hide the fact that she'd been waiting for this call with an anxiety usually reserved for major contract negotiations. "Have you had time to consider my offer?" There was a pause that stretched just long enough to make Victoria nervous. When Marcus spoke again, his voice carried the careful weight of someone making a decision that would change everything. "I'd like to hear more details about the position, the responsibilities, the schedule, what exactly you're looking for." Practical questions from a practical man who'd learned to be cautious about opportunities that seemed too good to be true. Victoria found herself respecting him more with each interaction, understanding why a little girl could grow up feeling safe and loved, despite whatever hardships they faced together. "Excellent. When would be convenient for you to come in for a proper interview?" Marcus checked something, probably his calendar or schedule of handyman jobs. "I can do tomorrow afternoon after I drop Emma off at school. Would 2 o'clock work?" Always the father first, always thinking about his daughter's needs before his own. Victoria made a note in her calendar, the simple act feeling weighted with significance. "Perfect. 2 o'clock, my office in Seattle. I'll text you the address and parking information." She paused, then added something that wasn't purely professional. "Marcus, thank you for calling. I know this isn't exactly conventional, and I appreciate you taking a chance on—" She struggled for the right words. On what? On her, on them. On the possibility that Friday afternoon's collision of worlds might lead somewhere neither of them had expected. "Thank you for offering the chance." Marcus's voice was quiet. "Emma hasn't stopped talking about the cake or the nice lady who bought it for her." There was something in his tone, a warmth, that suggested their encounter had left an impression on him too. That maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just about job opportunities and professional advancement. Maybe it was about something more human and more necessary. After they hung up, Victoria sat in her office chair and realized she was smiling. Really smiling, not the professional expression she wore for business meetings and networking events. This was the kind of smile that came from genuine anticipation, from the feeling that something good was about to begin. She hadn't felt this way about a Tuesday afternoon in longer than she could remember. Tomorrow would bring answers to questions she hadn't known she was asking. Tomorrow would determine whether a moment of ugliness in a grocery store could transform into something beautiful and sustainable. Tomorrow would show whether Victoria Cross, CEO and self-made success story, could become someone worthy of Marcus Hayes's trust and Emma's cake-bright smile. But today, for the first time in years, Victoria found herself looking forward to tomorrow with something that felt remarkably like hope. Tuesday morning dawned clear over Portland, the kind of Pacific Northwest autumn day that made transplants understand why people tolerated the rain. Marcus Hayes stood before his closet at 6:30 staring at the single suit he owned. Navy blue, purchased 4 years ago for academic conferences he no longer attended, now hanging looser on a frame that grief and manual labor had whittled down. He'd had it dry cleaned yesterday, spending $20. He couldn't really afford the fabric, still carrying that chemical freshness that would fade by noon. Emma appeared in his doorway, already dressed for school in jeans and a sweater that Chloe, Nathan Cross's daughter, had outgrown and passed down through some charitable network Marcus didn't fully understand yet. "Daddy, you look like a professor again." The observation landed with unexpected weight. Marcus studied his reflection, seeing a ghost of who he'd been superimposed over, who he'd become. The calluses on his hands wouldn't disappear before the interview. The slight sunburn on his neck from last week's outdoor repair work marked him as clearly as a brand. Would he fit in the sleek offices of Cross Medical Technologies? Or would he be as out of place as Victoria Cross had seemed in his world at Whole Foods? "Do I look okay, sweetheart?" Emma tilted her head with the seriousness children bring to important assessments. "You look like someone important, but you're always important to me." Marcus dropped to one knee, pulling her into a hug that lasted longer than usual. This interview represented a crossroads, a potential future so different from their present reality that he couldn't quite visualize it. The risk of failure felt crushing, but the risk of not trying felt worse. The drive to Seattle took exactly 3 hours, his aging Ford F-150 consuming gas he'd budgeted carefully. Interstate 5 North carried him through familiar terrain made foreign by context. He was heading to an interview, not a Home Depot run. The suit jacket hung on a hook behind his seat, protected from the coffee stains and fast food wrappers that normally occupied his truck's interior. Seattle emerged from the morning haze like a promise or a threat, impossible to tell which. The downtown core bristled with glass towers that caught sunlight and threw it back in sharp geometric patterns. Ferries crossed Elliott Bay in their eternal dance between Seattle and Bainbridge Island. Wealth was everywhere, coded in the Tesla charging stations and organic markets, and people who'd never had to choose between electricity and groceries. Cross Medical Technologies occupied floors 35 through 40 of a glass tower on 3rd Avenue. Marcus found public parking 3 blocks away, paid $28 for 2 hours with money that felt like it was burning, and walked through streets where his work boots and off-the-rack suit marked him as unmistakably other. The lobby assault began immediately. Marble floors reflected LED lights with blinding efficiency. A Chihuly glass sculpture dominated one wall, swirls of blue and amber that probably cost more than Marcus had earned in the past year. The air itself smelled expensive, some combination of fresh flowers and whatever scent wealthy people paid to have pumped through ventilation systems. The receptionist, a woman in her late 20s whose nameplate read Vanessa, greeted him with professional courtesy that couldn't quite hide her assessment of his presence. "Dr. Hayes." Marcus registered surprise at the title, then remembered his CV must have preceded him somehow. "Yes, I have an appointment with Ms. Cross at 2. Elevator to the 38th floor executive level. Ms. Cross's assistant will meet you there." The elevator ride was silent except for the subtle hum of machinery lifting him away from street level and everything familiar. When the doors opened, the atmosphere shifted. Quieter here, more intimate despite the wealth on display. Carpet thick enough to muffle footsteps. Original paintings on walls. Floor-to-ceiling windows offering views of Puget Sound that people paid millions to wake up to. Margaret, Victoria's assistant, materialized with the efficiency of someone who'd perfected the art of appearing exactly when needed. 50-something sharp eyes that missed nothing, sensible heels that suggested she valued function over fashion. "Dr. Hayes, welcome. Ms. Cross and Mr. Cross are waiting in the main conference room. Please follow me." The conference room held 3 people. Victoria stood as he entered, and Marcus registered how different she looked in her element. Charcoal gray suit, tailored to perfection. Blonde hair swept back in a style that probably required professional maintenance, every inch the CEO. But her eyes held something softer. Recognition, maybe, or relief that he'd actually shown up. "Marcus, thank you for coming." Nathan Cross, her younger brother, rose from his seat with easy athleticism. Tall, probably 6'2", casual, in a way that suggested he'd never had to prove himself. No jacket sleeves rolled to his elbows, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Dr. Hayes, pleasure to meet you. Victoria told me about your encounter. Quite the introduction." The third person in the room made Marcus's instincts flare with warning. Richard Dalton hadn't been mentioned, wasn't supposed to be here based on Victoria's brief phone outline yesterday, but occupied space at the conference table like he owned it. Expensive suit that screamed Armani or something equally ridiculous. Rolex watch catching light hair slicked back with product that probably cost more than Marcus's truck payment. Eyes calculating, assessing Marcus like a threat that needed quantifying. Victoria's voice cooled noticeably when she addressed him. "Richard, I don't recall inviting you to this meeting." Richard's smile was thin, a power move disguised as pleasantry. "As CFO, I make it my business to be involved in all significant hiring decisions, especially for high-level positions." He turned to Marcus, extending his hand. The grip was too firm, held too long, the kind of dominance display that Marcus had learned to recognize in academic politics. "Richard Peterson, Chief Financial Officer, and you are—" Before Marcus could answer, Nathan slid a folder across the table. Marcus glimpsed his own CV somehow obtained and printed his academic history laid bare. Dr. Marcus Hayes, doctorate in Hispanic linguistics from Stanford University, postdoctoral research at UT Austin on Mexican-American cultural communication patterns in business contexts, former professor at University of Oregon, published 23 peer-reviewed papers on Latino linguistic integration in the American Southwest. Nathan read the credentials with obvious respect. Richard's expression remained skeptical, his body language screaming territorial aggression. "Impressive on paper, but there's a considerable gap in your employment history, Mr. Hayes. Nearly 3 years. Care to explain?" Marcus felt the familiar tightening in his chest, the grief that never fully disappeared, just waiting for moments like this to surge back. "It's Dr. Hayes, actually." Richard blinked, not expecting pushback. Nathan's smile widened slightly. Victoria's expression remained neutral, but something in her eyes suggested satisfaction. "My apologies, Dr. Hayes, but the gap remains unexplained." Nathan intervened smoothly, his tone more diplomatic than challenging. "Marcus, would you mind sharing the circumstances with us, for context?" Marcus took a measured breath, centering himself the way he used to before difficult lectures. "My wife, Rachel, was diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer 3 years ago. She was a microbiologist, brilliant researcher. I took a leave of absence to care for her full-time, which eventually became a resignation when her condition deteriorated. After she passed 2 years ago, I had significant medical debt and a 6-year-old daughter who'd just lost her mother and was deeply traumatized. Returning to academia wasn't feasible. My daughter needed stability, and I provided that the only way I knew how." The room fell silent. Marcus didn't elaborate on the nights spent beside Rachel's hospital bed, grading papers while she slept fitfully under morphine. He didn't mention teaching remotely until his department head had gently suggested his focus seemed compromised. He didn't describe packing up his office while colleagues avoided eye contact, uncomfortable with grief so raw and visible it made them remember their own mortality. Nathan's expression shifted to something like empathy. "I understand putting family first. That takes courage. But help me understand why someone with your expertise couldn't find corporate work. Surely there were options between professor and handyman." Before Marcus could formulate a response that didn't sound defensive, Richard cut in with barely concealed hostility. "That's exactly my question. Most people don't fall quite so far without some underlying issues we should know about." The implication hung in the air, poisonous and deliberate. Victoria's hand moved slightly, like she was restraining herself from something unprofessional. Marcus looked directly at Richard, recognizing a bully when he saw one. "I learned something during those 3 years, Mr. Peterson. Real expertise isn't in the title. It's in the ability to solve problems, understand people, and deliver results. Those skills transfer whether you're teaching doctoral students or fixing leaky pipes. The question isn't why I fell, it's whether I can climb back up when given the chance." Victoria's smile was brief but genuine. Nathan nodded appreciatively. Richard's jaw tightened, the first crack in his composed facade. The conversation shifted to the Rodriguez medical merger. Victoria explaining the situation with clinical precision. Cross Medical Technologies wanted to acquire Rodriguez Medical Technologies, a Texas-based manufacturer of revolutionary cardiac monitoring equipment. $50 million hung in the balance, but 6 months of negotiations had produced nothing but frustration. Our previous translator was technically proficient but missed cultural context. Nathan pulled up a presentation on the screen behind him. The Rodriguez team felt we were being aggressive when we thought we were being direct. Meanwhile, we interpreted their thoroughness as evasion. Marcus nodded, immediately understanding the disconnect. That's classic Anglo versus Hispanic business culture collision. Anglo-American approach values efficiency, quick decisions, time as money philosophy. Hispanic-American approach, especially in Texas, where Rodriguez is based, values confianza, trust-based relationships. They build trust through demonstrated competence over time. Rush that process and you signal disrespect. Victoria leaned forward slightly, engagement clear in her posture. So, how do we bridge that gap? Marcus warmed to the subject, his academic expertise rising to the surface like muscle memory. You acknowledge both frameworks have merit. Germans value Gründlichkeit, thoroughness. Japanese value harmony. Hispanic cultures value confianza and personalismo, personal relationships over transactional efficiency. These aren't slower or less effective versions of Anglo business culture. They're completely different value systems that produce different kinds of success. Richard interrupted again, his tone dripping condescension. Fascinating cultural anthropology lesson, Dr. Hayes. But we're running a business, not a university seminar. Bottom line, can you actually help us close this deal, or is this all theoretical expertise? The challenge was blatant, intended to embarrass. Victoria opened her mouth to intervene, but Marcus raised a hand slightly. I have a proposal. You mentioned having a recorded conference call from last week with the Rodriguez team. Let me review it and provide analysis. Give me, say, 15 minutes to prepare, then I'll explain exactly where the cultural miscommunications are occurring and how to fix them. Richard's smile turned predatory. 20 minutes of preparation, Dr. Hayes. And the call is entirely in Spanish, highly technical medical terminology. Think you can handle that? Nathan shot Richard a warning look, but Marcus just nodded. 20 minutes is fine. They provided him with a small office, a laptop, headphones, and the recording. Marcus listened carefully, taking notes on legal paper someone had thoughtfully provided. The conversation was exactly what he'd expected, technically accurate translation that completely missed cultural subtext and business relationship dynamics. 20 minutes later, he returned to the conference room where Victoria, Nathan, and Richard waited with varying degrees of anticipation. Marcus launched directly into analysis, switching fluidly between English and Spanish to demonstrate points. 3 critical issues. First, linguistic accuracy versus cultural meaning. When Dr. Rodriguez says, necesitamos más tiempo para revisar, your translator rendered it as, we need more time to review. Technically correct, but it misses the cultural signal. He's not delaying, he's performing due diligence as a demonstration of seriousness. In Hispanic business culture, thoroughness equals respect. He pulled up his notes, pointing to specific timestamps. Second, your team's response, let's finalize this by Friday. In Anglo business culture, that's enthusiasm and efficiency. In Hispanic business culture, especially Texas, where Rodriguez operates, that sounds like pressure and distrust. You're essentially saying their thorough approach isn't valuable. Victoria and Nathan were leaning forward now, completely engaged. Richard's expression remained skeptical but less certain. Third, you missed a critical acceptance signal. At timestamp 18 minutes, Dr. Rodriguez said, apreciamos su compromiso con la calidad. Your translator said, we appreciate your commitment to quality. Accurate but bland. The cultural subtext is profound. In that context, he was giving green light to proceed, but embedding it in relationship-affirming language that Anglo listeners tuned out as pleasantries. Marcus switched to Spanish, demonstrating the correct approach. What you should have said, Dr. Rodriguez, entendemos que su meticulosidad refleja su compromiso con la excelencia, lo cual se alinea perfectamente con nuestros valores. Su análisis detallado nos ayuda a construir una mejor solución juntos. He translated for the room. Dr. Rodriguez, we understand that your thoroughness reflects your commitment to excellence, which aligns perfectly with our values. Your detailed analysis helps us build a better solution together. That response acknowledges his cultural framework, validates his approach, and positions you as partners rather than adversaries. Nathan was openly impressed. You identified 3 critical errors our $200 an hour translator missed, plus provided a path forward, in 20 minutes. Richard's face had gone pale, his sabotage backfiring spectacularly. Victoria's expression held something that looked like vindication mixed with relief. The interview continued for another hour, covering logistics, salary expectations, scheduling constraints. Marcus was firm about one non-negotiable requirement. I must pick up Emma from school every day at 3. That's not flexible. She's already lost her mother. She needs to know her father will always be there when he promises. Victoria didn't hesitate. We can accommodate that. Work from home options, flexible hours. My brother and I understand family commitments aren't optional. Nathan outlined a creative solution. Marcus would work 3 days per week in Seattle, 2 days remote from Portland. Cross Medical would provide a furnished studio apartment in Seattle for Monday through Wednesday nights. Thursday and Friday, he could work from home, available for video calls and document review. Salary would be $85,000 annually with full benefits, including health insurance that made Marcus's throat tight when he realized Emma could finally see a dentist again. As the interview concluded, handshakes were exchanged. Richard's was perfunctory and cold, his hostility barely masked. Nathan's was warm, genuine welcome from someone who appreciated competence. Victoria's hand lingered slightly longer than professional courtesy required, her eyes communicating something Marcus couldn't quite read, but felt nonetheless. Walking back to his truck, Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown Seattle number. Stay away from Victoria Cross. You don't belong in her world. This is your only warning. Marcus stared at the message, instinct telling him exactly who'd sent it. He deleted the text without responding, but unease settled in his gut like stones. Richard Peterson wasn't just territorial. He was dangerous. The drive back to Portland gave Marcus 3 hours to process what had just happened. He'd accepted the position pending background checks and official paperwork. In 2 weeks, he'd start a job that would fundamentally alter their lives. Better income, intellectual engagement, professional respect. But also Richard's open hostility, the cultural gap between his world and Victoria's, the risk that this opportunity might collapse as suddenly as it had appeared. Emma was waiting at Mrs. Chen's apartment when Marcus arrived home at 6:30. She flew into his arms with the fierce affection of 8-year-olds who'd learned early that people they loved could disappear. "How was the interview, Daddy?" "I got the job, sweetheart." Emma's squeal of delight pierced through his exhaustion and worry. She danced around their small living room, joy uncomplicated by adult anxieties about change and risk. "Does that mean we'll have more money? Can I take the Saturday art class Miss Rodriguez told me about?" Marcus felt emotion surge unexpectedly. For 2 years, every request had required careful calculation of what they could afford versus what Emma needed versus what could wait. The idea of saying yes without that crushing mental arithmetic felt revolutionary. "Yes, Con, you can take the art class." That night, after Emma was asleep, Marcus sat on their worn sofa and allowed himself to feel the full weight of possibility. His phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Victoria. "Jennifer Wu from HR will send paperwork tomorrow. Welcome to Cross Medical Technologies, Marcus. I'm glad you said yes." He stared at the message, reading between the lines for meaning that might not exist. Professional courtesy or something more impossible to tell, but the warmth in his chest suggested his instincts were picking up signals his rational mind couldn't yet process. "Thank you for the opportunity. I won't let you down." Her response came quickly. "I know you won't. That's why I offered." The first month passed in a blur of adjustment and achievement. Marcus moved minimal belongings into the studio apartment. Cross Medical provided a furnished space in Belltown with views of the Space Needle that seemed wasted on someone who'd grown accustomed to seeing only what was immediately necessary. Monday through Wednesday became his Seattle life business. Casual clothes, conference rooms, video calls with the Rodriguez team in San Antonio, where Dr. Miguel Rodriguez proved to be exactly what Marcus had predicted, warm, shrewd, and deeply invested in legacy rather than just profit. Thursday and Friday were Portland days, working remotely from the apartment he still shared with Emma, picking her up from school at 3, exactly helping with homework, maintaining the rhythms that gave her stability. The financial pressure eased gradually. Medical bills that had loomed like mountains began to shrink under systematic payment plans. Emma's dentist appointment revealed 2 cavities that could finally be filled. The Saturday art program started, and Marcus discovered Emma had inherited Rachel's natural talent for visual expression. But Richard's opposition intensified with each of Marcus's successes. Week 3 brought the first major clash. During a conference call with the Rodriguez team, Richard challenged Marcus directly in front of everyone. Dr. Hayes explained to us why Rodriguez is requesting an additional 60 days for due diligence when our timeline is crystal clear. The question was designed to embarrass to position Marcus as either incompetent or complicit in delays. Marcus felt every eye on the video screen turned toward him. Dr. Rodriguez's expression remained neutral, but Marcus caught the slight tension in his shoulders. Marcus switched to Spanish, addressing Rodriguez directly. "Dr. Rodriguez, I understand your team's request for extended due diligence. In Hispanic business culture, thoroughness isn't a delay tactic. It's a demonstration of seriousness and respect for the partnership you're building. Would you be willing to help our team understand your specific concerns during this period?" Dr. Rodriguez's face softened immediately. "Exactamente, Dr. Hayes. We're not delaying. We're ensuring that this partnership honors 40 years of legacy and serves our community for the next 40. Your team seems focused on speed, but in Texas we believe más vale construir bien que rápido, better to build well than fast." Marcus translated for the Anglo team, then added cultural context. What Dr. Rodriguez is communicating isn't resistance, it's invitation. He's offering to walk us through his concerns, which in Hispanic business culture is a profound gesture of trust. This is actually a breakthrough, not an obstacle. Victoria caught on immediately, her business instincts recognizing opportunity. "Dr. Rodriguez, we'd be honored to understand your process more deeply. Marcus, can you arrange a more detailed session where we can learn from Rodriguez's due diligence approach?" The call ended with tangible progress for the first time in months. As people disconnected, Richard remained on the line, his face rigid with barely contained fury. "A word, Dr. Hayes, privately." Victoria started to intervene, but Marcus gave her a subtle headshake. Better to deal with Richard directly than let this fester. Once the call was truly private, Richard's mask dropped completely. "You're making me look bad in front of the board and our partners. I don't know what your game is, but I see through it." Marcus kept his voice level, refusing to match Richard's hostility. "I don't have a game, Mr. Peterson. I'm doing the job Victoria hired me to do. If that makes you uncomfortable, perhaps you should examine why." "Stay away from her." Richard's voice dropped to something dangerous. "Victoria and I have history. She's not thinking clearly where you're concerned. You're a project for her, a charity case she'll lose interest in once the novelty wears off." The words were designed to wound, to plant doubt. Marcus felt them land but refused to let them take root. "My relationship with Ms. Cross is professional. Whatever history you two have is your business, not mine. Everything involving Victoria is my business." Richard leaned closer to his camera. "You don't belong in this world, Hayes. You're playing dress-up in a suit you can't afford, pretending your handyman origins don't show. How long before Victoria realizes she made a mistake?" Marcus ended the call without responding, but the poison had been administered. That night, lying in his studio apartment staring at Seattle's skyline, Marcus wondered if Richard was right. The cultural gap between his life and Victoria's seemed unbridgeable. She lived in a mansion on Queen Anne Hill. He lived in a one-bedroom apartment in southeast Portland where gunshots occasionally punctuated the night. She drove a Bentley. He drove a truck held together by hope and mechanical knowledge. She attended galas where his annual salary might cover the wine budget. But then he remembered the way Victoria looked at Emma, the genuine warmth when she'd insisted on covering family benefits. The text messages that sometimes arrived late at night with questions about Hispanic business culture that could have waited until morning, but felt like connection instead. Week 4 brought escalation. Richard accidentally forwarded Marcus's internal notes on Hispanic negotiation psychology directly to the Rodriguez team. The notes were respectful, analytical, but examining the Rodriguez team's cultural approach with academic distance could have been perceived as manipulative or insulting. Marcus found out when Dr. Rodriguez called him directly, bypassing official channels. "Marcus, I received some interesting documents from Mr. Peterson. Analysis of our business culture, our decision-making patterns. I wanted to discuss this with you before I respond officially." Marcus's stomach dropped, but he chose honesty over defensiveness. "Dr. Rodriguez, those were internal notes to help the cross-medical team understand your approach better. The goal was to help them see your thoroughness as strength rather than obstacle. I apologize if the clinical analysis seemed disrespectful." There was a long pause. Then Dr. Rodriguez's warm laugh filled the line. "Marcus, I'm not offended. I'm impressed. Your analysis is accurate, insightful, and demonstrates exactly the kind of cultural intelligence this merger needs. Mr. Peterson, on the other hand, clearly doesn't understand that transparency builds trust." The sabotage had backfired again, but Marcus knew Richard wouldn't stop. The pattern was clear. Each of Marcus's successes made Richard more desperate, more dangerous. Friday of week 4, Victoria called Marcus into her office after hours. The setting sun painted Seattle's skyline in amber, and rose the city lights beginning their evening performance against the gathering dark. "Marcus, I need to warn you, corporate security flagged something concerning. Richard has been investigating you. Database searches, calls to University of Oregon inquiries about your financial situation." Marcus felt violations settle over him like oil. "Is that legal?" "Gray area. As CFO, he can claim due diligence. But this level of scrutiny for a settled position, unusual and troubling." Victoria moved to the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. "Marcus, I'm worried Richard won't stop at professional sabotage. He knows about Emma, about your situation. He might try to use that against you." "He already has." Marcus pulled out his phone, showing her the threatening text from his interview day. Victoria's expression hardened into something formidable. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I can handle Richard Peterson. I've dealt with academic politics, tenure committee, backstabbing, departmental warfare. He's not the first bully I've encountered. But he's the most resourced." Victoria turned from the window, her eyes catching the dying light. "Richard has money connections and a vindictive streak. If he decides to make your life difficult, he has tools most bullies don't possess." The warning settled between them, acknowledged, but not fully addressed. Marcus found himself noticing details he'd been too professional to register before: the way Victoria's hair caught sunlight, the slight tremor in her hands that suggested she was less composed than she appeared, the careful distance she maintained as if aware that closing it would cross some invisible boundary. "I should go." Marcus stood suddenly aware of how isolated they were, how the office cleaning crews hadn't started yet, how the space felt intimate in ways conference rooms never did. 3-hour drive and Emma's waiting. "Marcus, wait." He paused at the door. Victoria seemed to be wrestling with something, words forming and dissolving before reaching her lips. "Be careful, not just with Richard but with expectations. This world I inhabit, it's not as appealing as it looks from outside. The wealth comes with costs you might not want to pay. I'm not trying to join your world, Victoria. I'm just trying to do my job and provide for my daughter." "I know. That's what makes you—" She stopped herself, shaking her head. "Drive safe. Text me when you get home." The request felt personal, crossing from professional courtesy into something harder to define. Marcus nodded. Leaving before the moment could stretch into meaning neither of them was ready to acknowledge. The drive back to Portland gave him time to process the warning, the threat, the growing sense that his life was balanced on fault lines he couldn't see but could feel shifting. Emma was asleep when he arrived, Mrs. Chen having stayed late without being asked because neighbors in their building looked out for each other in ways wealthy neighborhoods never needed to. Marcus carried Emma to bed without waking her, tucking her in among the stuffed animals and art supplies that marked her territory. In sleep, she looked so much like Rachel, it hurt the same delicate features, the same stubborn set to her jaw, even in rest. His phone buzzed, Victoria confirming he'd arrived safely. He sent a brief response, then stared at their text history. Professional questions about Rodriguez Medical? Yes, but also small exchanges about Emma's art class, about restaurants in Seattle. Marcus should try about the book Victoria was reading that made her think of Rachel's cancer research. Week 5 began with unexpected news. Nathan called Monday morning before Marcus had left Portland. Marcus Rodriguez wants face-to-face meetings. San Antonio, Texas, 3 days next week, Tuesday through Thursday. They specifically requested you attend. Said you're essential to finalizing terms. Marcus felt pride and panic in equal measure. San Antonio. That's 3 days midweek. I can't leave Emma that long. Bring her. Company covers everything: flights, hotel, childcare during meetings. The Mandarin Oriental has excellent kids programs. She'd be safe and entertained while you're working. The logistics were doable, but something about the timing felt off. San Antonio was only an hour from Austin, where Jennifer Brennan, Rachel's sister, lived and worked. They hadn't spoken in over a year, their relationship strained by Jennifer's disapproval of Marcus's choices after Rachel's death. Let me think about it. Marcus, this isn't optional. Rodriguez executives don't fly people to Texas for nothing. This is our chance to close the deal or watch it die. We need you there. After Nathan hung up, Marcus sat in his truck outside Emma's school, processing implications. 3 days away from Portland, away from familiar territory with Emma in tow. Professional opportunity balanced against parental anxiety. He texted Victoria for her perspective. Her response came quickly. This is the breakthrough we've been working toward. We'll make sure Emma's taken care of. Trust me. That word trust carried weight. Victoria probably didn't intend. Marcus was trusting her with more than just logistics. He was trusting her with his daughter's well-being, with the career resurrection she'd offered, with the possibility that their connection wasn't just professional courtesy from a guilty CEO trying to assuage her conscience. Okay, we'll go. The weekend brought an unsettling phone call. Saturday morning, Marcus's phone rang with a Boston area code he didn't recognize. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Marcus, it's Jennifer. Jennifer Brennan. Rachel's sister. The lawyer who'd sent exactly 3 emails in 2 years, each one questioning his choices, his financial stability, his fitness as a single parent. Jennifer, this is unexpected. I heard you have a new position, corporate work in Seattle. The question sent alarm bells ringing. How had she heard about his job change? Yes, with a medical technology company, translation and cultural consultation. That's wonderful, Marcus. Rachel would be so relieved. The implication that Rachel wouldn't have been relieved before stung deliberately. I'm actually going to be in San Antonio next week. Business trip. I thought maybe I could see Emma while I'm down there. I'm only an hour away in Austin, and it's been too long. Marcus's instincts screamed warnings he couldn't articulate. We'll have a very tight schedule, Jennifer. I'm there for critical negotiations. Surely you can spare a few hours for Emma's aunt, her only connection to her mother's family. The guilt manipulation was expert, honed by years of legal practice. I'll think about it and let you know. After hanging up, Marcus sat with spreading dread. Jennifer calling out of nowhere, knowing about his job, knowing about the San Antonio trip. Coincidence felt increasingly unlikely. He thought about Richard's investigation, his resources, his vindictiveness. Could Richard have contacted Jennifer, fed her information designed to create problems? Monday morning arrived with the weight of accumulated tension. Marcus and Emma flew to San Antonio on tickets Cross Medical had arranged, business-class seats that made Emma's eyes go wide with wonder. Daddy, is this what rich people do all the time? This is what the company provides for business travel, sweetheart. It's not our normal life, remember? When we go home, we go back to our regular world. Victoria was on the same flight, though Marcus hadn't known until they boarded. She'd chosen casual clothes, jeans, and a sweater, and looked more approachable than her CEO armor usually allowed. Mind if I sit here? She gestured to the empty seat beside Marcus. Emma, already absorbed in the in-flight entertainment system. The flight became an unexpected intimacy. Conversation that started professionally drifted into personal territory. Victoria talked about losing her father the previous year, the guilt of having been in Frankfurt for business when he'd had his fatal heart attack. Marcus shared stories about Rachel's final months, the impossible choices between research deadlines and bedside vigils. Do you ever regret it? Leaving your career? Victoria's question was tentative, genuinely curious rather than judgmental. Every day and never. I regret that Rachel died. I regret that Emma lost her mother. I regret the medical debt and the professional opportunities that evaporated. But I don't regret being there for Rachel when she needed me most. That's not even a choice, it's just what love requires. Victoria was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at clouds that looked solid enough to walk on. I sometimes wonder if building Cross Medical was worth missing so much time with my father. He was so proud of what I'd accomplished, but I wasn't there when it mattered. I was closing deals and winning contracts while he was dying alone in a hospital room. Marcus recognized the shape of her guilt, the same contours his own wore. He knew you loved him. That has to count for something. Does it? Or is that just what we tell ourselves to make peace with choices we can't undo? The question hung between them, unanswerable and profound. Emma interrupted, pointing out the window at San Antonio appearing below the city, spreading across Texas landscape like a promise. La Cantera Resort sprawled across Texas hill country with the casual opulence of old oil money. The suite Cross Medical had booked was larger than Marcus's entire Portland apartment. Emma discovered it room by room, squealing with delight at each new luxury, the marble bathroom with separate shower and tub, the bedroom with a four-poster bed and stuffed animals already waiting the living room with views of the hill country rolling away toward distant horizons. Daddy, is this real? Or are we dreaming? Victoria, who'd walked them to their suite despite having her own down the hall, smiled at Emma's wonder. It's real, sweetheart. And tomorrow, while your dad's in meetings, you and I are going to explore San Antonio. Riverwalk the Alamo, maybe some real Tex-Mex food. How does that sound? Emma's face lit up with trust that made Marcus's chest tight. His daughter had learned to be wary after losing Rachel, but Victoria was somehow slipping past those defenses with genuine care rather than manipulation. Tuesday morning brought the first negotiation session at Rodriguez Medical Technologies headquarters in San Antonio. The building itself made a statement Southwestern architecture that honored Texas heritage art, featuring Hispanic cultural icons, bilingual signage treating Spanish and English as equals rather than hierarchy. Dr. Miguel Rodriguez met them personally at the entrance, and Marcus immediately understood why the deal had stalled. Rodriguez was warm but shrewd late 50s, with silver threading his dark hair eyes that assessed character before credentials. He greeted everyone with abrazo, rather than handshake, the Hispanic embrace that signaled relationship over transaction. The conference room was full. Rodriguez's team, Dr. Elena Vasquez, as CT. Oh, passionate about technology, serving underserved communities. Carlos Mendoza, as CO. Oh, family man, whose every decision filtered through community impact. Cross Medical's team, Victoria Nathan Richard, whose presence Marcus hadn't expected, but should have legal counsel taking notes. But the real difference was cultural approach. Rodriguez's team began with coffee and pan-dulce sweetbread that accompanied conversation about families, about San Antonio's heat, about anything except business. 30 minutes of relationship building that had the Anglo team visibly fidgeting. Richard's impatience finally broke containment. Can we please discuss contract terms? We've been here 90 minutes and haven't addressed a single substantive issue. The temperature in the room dropped noticeably. Dr. Rodriguez's expression remained pleasant, but his eyes hardened. Mr. Dalton in Texas, we have a saying, más vale tarde que nunca, pero más vale construir bien que rápido. Better late than never, but better to build well than fast. You want numbers, I can give you numbers. But numbers mean nothing without trust, and trust takes time. He turned to Marcus, switching to Spanish. Dr. Hayes, does your team understand what we're building here? This isn't just selling my company. This is entrusting 40 years of legacy, hundreds of employees who are like family technology that serves communities most medical companies ignore. I need to know my life's work will be honored, not just acquired. Marcus responded in Spanish, then translated for the Anglo team. Dr. Rodriguez is explaining that the merger isn't primarily financial for him. It's about legacy and mission. Rodriguez Medical serves predominantly Hispanic communities in South Texas with cardiovascular technology. Higher heart disease rates, lower access to care. The company was built to address that gap. He needs assurance that Cross Medical will preserve that mission, not just extract the technology. Victoria leaned forward, her business instincts catching the opening. Dr. Rodriguez, we want to understand and preserve your legacy. The mission is precisely what makes Rodriguez Medical valuable. Not just the technology, but the purpose behind it. Dr. Rodriguez's face softened, the first real breakthrough visible. That's the first time an Anglo partner has said that. Thank you, Ms. Cross. The afternoon session proceeded with Marcus facilitating rather than Richard leading. Cultural translation became more than just language. It was reframing business assumptions, helping each side see the other's logic. Dr. Vasquez presented the cardiac monitoring technology with passionate Spanish, describing how it saved lives in San Antonio clinics serving uninsured families. Marcus didn't just translate, he contextualized. Dr. Vasquez isn't selling technology, she's describing mission. In Hispanic business culture, success isn't measured purely by profit, but by community impact. This technology is being used in free clinics throughout South Texas. That's Rodriguez Medical's legacy, what they need preserved. Nathan got it immediately, his expression shifting from transactional to genuine engagement. We're not just acquiring technology, we're inheriting responsibility to communities we've never served. That's valuable, but it's also a commitment we need to honor. The meeting ended with tangible progress, first real movement in 6 months of stalled negotiations. As they gathered materials, Dr. Rodriguez extended an unexpected invitation. My wife and I would be honored if you'd all join us for dinner tonight at our home. We're having a small family gathering, nothing fancy, just the way we like to do business in Texas, breaking bread together. Richard started to decline, but Victoria accepted immediately. We'd be honored, Dr. Rodriguez. Thank you. Marcus's phone buzzed as they left the building. A text from an Austin area code. Marcus, I'm in San Antonio. We need to talk about Emma. Tonight. Don't make me come to your hotel. Jennifer. The dread Marcus had been suppressing surged back. He showed Victoria the message. Bring her to dinner. Victoria's response was immediate and strategic. Dr. Rodriguez's home public setting witnesses. She can't make a scene there, and we can deal with her together. The Rodriguez home in suburban San Antonio was everything Marcus expected, sprawling, warm, filled with 3 generations of family. Kids playing in the yard, grandparents holding court on the patio, the smell of authentic Tex-Mex filling the air. Extended family numbered at least 20, maybe more. Chaos and love intermingled in ways Marcus hadn't experienced since Rachel's death. Emma thrived immediately, joining Rodriguez's grandchildren in a game whose rules seemed to change every 5 minutes. Dr. Rodriguez's wife Maria swept Marcus into conversation about education and art, discovering Emma's talent and immediately connecting her with their daughter, who taught at a local arts academy. 8 o'clock brought Jennifer's arrival uninvited, but not unexpected. Dr. Rodriguez, demonstrating the hospitality deeply embedded in Hispanic culture, welcomed her despite the obvious awkwardness. Any family of Marcus's is welcome. Please join us. Jennifer looked stiff and uncomfortable, her lawyer armor ill-fitted to this warm chaos. She sat beside Marcus, watching Emma play with children who'd accepted her instantly. She looks happy. She is happy. Marcus, we need to talk, privately. Victoria appeared beside them, protective instinct overriding social courtesy. Anything you need to say to Marcus, you can say in front of me. I'm invested in Emma's well-being. Jennifer's assessment of Victoria was clinical lawyer's eyes cataloging details. "You're the CEO, the one paying for all this." A gesture encompassing the trip, the hotel, the lifestyle Marcus could never have afforded independently. "I'm someone who cares about Marcus and Emma. That's what matters." The standoff might have escalated, but Dr. Rodriguez intervened with the wisdom of someone who'd navigated family conflicts for decades. In Hispanic culture, we have a concept, compadrazgo, chosen family. Not just blood relatives, but people who commit to each other, who become family through loyalty and love. Whatever your disagreement, remember, la familia es lo más importante. Family, whether blood or chosen, is what matters most. The words seemed to reach Jennifer in ways argument couldn't. She watched Emma laughing with Rodriguez's grandchildren. Marcus relaxed in a way she probably hadn't seen since Rachel's death. Victoria naturally maternal with Emma in ways that suggested genuine care rather than obligation. "Maybe we should talk tomorrow, when Emma isn't around." Marcus felt surprise and relief in equal measure. "Tomorrow morning, Hotel Restaurant 7. Jennifer left shortly after the crisis temporarily diffused, but not resolved. The dinner continued with warmth that Marcus had almost forgotten existed, the kind of family gathering that wrapped around you like armor against the world's harshness. Wednesday morning arrived with the weight of unfinished confrontations. Marcus woke at 5:30, dressed quietly, while Emma slept surrounded by the luxury of their suite, and made his way to La Cantera's restaurant, where Jennifer waited with coffee already cooling in front of her. She looked exhausted, her lawyer composure cracked enough to show the human underneath. When she spoke, her voice carried none of yesterday's aggression. "I need to tell you the truth, Marcus. A man named Richard Dalton contacted me 3 weeks ago. He had documentation emails from University of Oregon about your performance issues when Rachel was sick, reports about declining productivity, questions about your reliability. He presented it like you'd been fired for professional misconduct, like you were hiding failures, and Emma was suffering because of your instability." Marcus felt fury coil in his chest, controlled but present. "Those emails are from when my wife was dying, Jennifer. Context matters. I wasn't fired. I resigned to care for Rachel full-time because she needed me more than the university did." Jennifer's hands shook slightly around her coffee cup. "I know that now. But Richard made it sound convincing. He had your financial records, somehow showed me debt I didn't know about, painted a picture of Emma living in poverty while you pretended everything was fine. He even offered to pay for my attorney, said he was a concerned citizen trying to protect a child." The manipulation was expert layered, designed to exploit Jennifer's genuine love for her sister's memory and concern for Emma. Marcus recognized Richard's handiwork in every detail. "Last night at the Rodriguez home, seeing Emma so happy, you so confident, Victoria so protective, I realized Richard lied to me. Or at minimum, he twisted truth into something unrecognizable." Jennifer pulled out her phone, scrolling to show Marcus an email chain. "This is from Thomas Warren, the lawyer Richard connected me with. He's been pushing custody proceedings, said we had a strong case, kept talking about Emma's best interests. But Marcus, I don't think he ever cared about Emma. I think someone was using me to hurt you." Marcus read the emails, seeing the architecture of Richard's attack laid bare. The timing was too perfect, reaching Jennifer just as Marcus started at Cross Medical, feeding her information designed to maximize damage, offering resources to make the threat credible. "I'm withdrawing the custody claim completely. Thomas is filing paperwork this morning. Marcus, I'm so sorry. Rachel would never forgive me for this." The apology landed with unexpected weight. Marcus had prepared for battle, for legal warfare that would drain what little resources he'd accumulated. Instead, he found himself facing Jennifer's genuine remorse. "I want a relationship with Emma, as her aunt as family. No legal claims, just connection. Can we try that?" Marcus studied Rachel's sister, seeing grief and guilt in equal measure. She'd lost Rachel too, had been grasping for control in a situation where loss was the only certainty. "We can try, but Jennifer, trust isn't automatic. You'll need to earn it back, and that takes time." "I understand. Thank you for even giving me the chance." After Jennifer left, Marcus sat alone in the restaurant as early morning sun painted the hill country in shades of amber and gold. The custody threat had evaporated, but Richard's willingness to weaponize Emma against him revealed depths of malice Marcus hadn't fully appreciated. This wasn't just office politics or professional rivalry. This was war. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. How did it go with Jennifer? She withdrew the custody claim. Richard manipulated her with false information. She was a weapon, not an enemy. Victoria's response came quickly. Emergency meeting. My suite 30 minutes. Bring coffee. When Marcus arrived, Victoria's suite held more people than expected. Nathan was there via video call from his room. Eleanor Hartley, a family law attorney Victoria had apparently contacted, joined remotely from her Boston office. And Margaret, Victoria's assistant, sat with a laptop and the focused intensity of someone about to take detailed notes. Eleanor Hartley looked formidable even through a screen. Mid-50s steel-gray hair, eyes that had seen every manipulation family law could produce. Dr. Hayes, I've reviewed the preliminary information Nathan sent overnight. Let me be direct. They cannot take Emma from you based on what I'm seeing. You're her biological father, legal guardian. No evidence of neglect, abuse, or inability to provide appropriate care. Everything suggests the opposite: extraordinary sacrifices for your daughter's well-being. Marcus felt relief flood through him despite Jennifer's withdrawal. Then what's Richard's angle? If the case was always weak, why pursue it? Eleanor's expression hardened. Intimidation. You're in San Antonio for career-defining negotiations, separated from familiar support systems, maximum stress. Classic tactic: hit someone when they're most vulnerable, force them to fight on multiple fronts simultaneously. Nathan's voice came through the laptop speaker, tight with controlled anger. Corporate security traced Richard's phone records. 5 calls to Thomas Warren's office over 3 weeks, plus data searches on Marcus that went far beyond normal HR background checks. We're documenting everything for the board meeting. Victoria leaned forward, her CEO persona fully engaged. Board meeting is scheduled for tomorrow morning, 9 sharp. We're presenting evidence of Richard's conduct, unauthorized investigation, manipulation of family relationships, interference with employee welfare. Nathan and I are recommending immediate termination. Marcus processed this information, understanding dawning. You're firing him because of me. We're terminating him because he violated corporate ethics, exposed cross-medical to legal liability, and attempted to sabotage critical business negotiations for personal reasons. Victoria's voice was steel-wrapped in professionalism. The fact that you're the target matters, but the behavior itself is grounds for dismissal, regardless of who he targeted. Eleanor interjected with legal precision. Mr. Dalton's actions expose cross-medical to lawsuits for invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress, interference with parental rights. If Dr. Hayes chose to pursue civil action, the company could face millions in damages. From a purely business perspective, Richard Dalton is a liability that needs immediate removal. The conversation continued for another hour, mapping strategy and preparing evidence. Marcus's role was straightforward: attend the Rodriguez negotiations as planned, demonstrate competence. Let Victoria and Nathan handle Richard. But sitting in Victoria's suite, surrounded by people mobilizing corporate and legal resources to protect him, Marcus felt the fundamental asymmetry of their worlds. Victoria commanded armies of lawyers and security professionals. She could end Richard's career with a board vote. Her wealth and power made problems disappear with efficiency Marcus could barely comprehend. He'd spent 2 years solving problems with duct tape and determination, watching every dollar, making impossible choices between competing necessities. These were different universes, and Marcus wasn't sure he belonged in hers, despite the suit he now wore. The morning negotiation session at Rodriguez Medical brought unexpected breakthrough. Without Richard's toxic presence, he'd claimed sudden illness and stayed at the hotel. The atmosphere transformed. Marcus presented the final cultural integration framework. He'd developed a detailed plan for merging Cross-Medical's efficiency-driven approach with Rodriguez Medical's community-focused mission. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Rodriguez Medical would maintain its brand identity and San Antonio headquarters. The community health programs serving uninsured Hispanic populations would continue with increased funding from Cross Medical's larger budget. Dr. Vasquez would lead a new division focused specifically on cardiovascular care in underserved communities, her passion given resources to scale impact beyond South Texas. Dr. Rodriguez listened with increasing emotion, occasionally wiping his eyes as Marcus described in Spanish how the merger would honor rather than erase 40 years of legacy building. Dr. Hayes, 6 months ago this partnership seemed impossible. We spoke different languages, pursued different goals, couldn't find common ground. You didn't just translate words, you translated intent, values, worldviews. You built a bridge we didn't know we needed. He switched to English, addressing Victoria and Nathan directly. On behalf of Rodriguez Medical Technologies, we accept the merger terms as presented. Let's build something that serves both profit and purpose, that honors both efficiency and community. The room erupted in applause. Handshakes became a Brazos formality, dissolving into genuine celebration. $50 million in agreements, yes, but more importantly, a partnership that might actually work, because cultural differences had been acknowledged rather than ignored. Victoria caught Marcus's eye across the conference room, her smile carrying pride that felt personal rather than professional. In that moment, with Texas sun streaming through windows and two companies finding unexpected harmony, Marcus allowed himself to feel successful rather than just employed. The celebration was interrupted by Nathan's phone buzzing insistently. He glanced at the screen, frowned, and stepped outside. When he returned, his expression was grim. Richard just filed a formal complaint with the board. Claims Marcus has been conducting unauthorized negotiations, exceeded his authority, potentially working as a plant for Rodriguez to extract better terms. He's demanding immediate termination and investigation. The joy drained from the room. Dr. Rodriguez's expression darkened with understanding. This is the man you're firing tomorrow. He's trying to burn everything down before you can remove him. Apparently. Nathan's jaw was tight. Emergency board call in 2 hours. Victoria, we need to get back to the hotel and prep. Marcus felt the familiar weight of powerlessness settling over him. His future, Emma's stability, everything he'd built over the past month, all of it hanging on a board meeting where he had no voice, no control, no ability to defend himself against Richard's manufactured accusations. The drive back to La Cantera was silent, except for Nathan's phone calls marshaling evidence and allies for the coming confrontation. Victoria sat beside Marcus in the car, her hand moving as if to touch his, then pulling back as professional boundaries reasserted themselves. At the hotel, Victoria pulled Marcus aside while Nathan headed to his room to coordinate with Seattle. You should be on this call. The board needs to hear directly from you, understand what Richard's been doing. I'm not an executive. I have no standing in a board meeting. You're the victim of corporate malfeasance. That gives you standing. 2 hours later, Marcus found himself in a conference room facing a wall-mounted screen showing 9 board members via video from Cross Medical's Seattle headquarters. Margaret Sterling, the board chair, presided with the no-nonsense authority of someone who'd spent 40 years in boardrooms and had seen every variation of corporate drama. Also present physically, Victoria, Nathan, Eleanor Hartley, via laptop. On video from his hotel room, Richard Dalton and his attorney, a sharp-eyed man whose expression suggested he knew his client was in trouble but was obligated to mount a defense anyway. Margaret Sterling called the meeting to order with brisk efficiency. This emergency session addresses serious allegations against CFO Richard Dalton, as well as counter-allegations from Mr. Dalton regarding Dr. Marcus Hayes. Ms. Cross, you requested this meeting. Proceed. Victoria's presentation was devastating in its clinical precision. She projected evidence on screen timeline of Richard's escalating sabotage phone records showing contact with Jennifer's attorney, unauthorized access to Marcus's university email accounts, corporate security reports documenting Richard's investigation far exceeding any legitimate HR inquiry. Mr. Dalton's actions endanger Cross Medical legally, financially, and reputationally. He attempted to manipulate family court proceedings against an employee. He forwarded proprietary negotiation strategies to outside parties. He created a hostile work environment intended to force Dr. Hayes's resignation. Each of these actions independently would justify termination. Collectively, they represent a pattern of conduct inconsistent with any executive role. Nathan followed with business impact analysis. The Rodriguez merger had stalled for 6 months under Richard's leadership. 3 months with Marcus as cultural liaison had produced more progress than the previous half year. Dr. Rodriguez had specifically praised Marcus's contribution and specifically questioned Richard's judgment. We have written testimony from Dr. Rodriguez stating that if Richard Dalton remains employed at Cross Medical, Rodriguez Medical will reconsider the merger. Our $50 million partnership is contingent on removing the person who's been sabotaging it from the beginning. Eleanor Hartley delivered the legal assessment with prosecutorial thoroughness. Mr. Dalton's conduct exposes Cross Medical to multiple lawsuits: invasion of privacy for accessing Dr. Hayes's confidential university records without authorization, intentional infliction of emotional distress for orchestrating a custody threat against Dr. Hayes's daughter, interference with parental rights which in some jurisdictions carries criminal penalties, computer fraud under federal law for unauthorized email access. If Dr. Hayes pursues civil action, Cross Medical faces liability in the millions. Richard's attorney attempted defense, but his argument sounded hollow even to Marcus's ears. My client conducted due diligence appropriate to his role as CFO. Any investigation into employee backgrounds falls within normal corporate security protocols. Margaret Sterling cut him off with surgical precision. Counselor explained how contacting an employee's family member's attorney to facilitate custody proceedings constitutes corporate due diligence. Silence. The attorney had no answer that wouldn't incriminate his client further. Richard finally spoke, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. This is about Victoria. It's always about Victoria. She brought this handyman into the company, gave him access to our most critical negotiations, started playing happy family with his daughter. I was protecting corporate interests from her poor judgment. Victoria's response was ice-cold, every word measured. Dr. Hayes holds a doctorate from Stanford University. He has published 23 peer-reviewed papers. He single-handedly salvaged negotiations you mismanaged for 6 months. And my personal relationships, professional or otherwise, are none of your concern. Not anymore. Not ever again. The board members conferred briefly via a sidebar video channel Marcus couldn't see. When Margaret Sterling returned her attention to the full meeting, her expression was resolved. The board has reviewed evidence and deliberated in executive session prior to this emergency meeting. Our vote was unanimous. Effective immediately, Richard Dalton is terminated as Chief Financial Officer of Cross Medical Technologies. Severance package will reflect years of service while accounting for circumstances of dismissal. Company devices and access credentials must be surrendered within 24 hours. Richard stood abruptly, his chair scraping across the floor of his hotel room, visible on camera. This isn't over, Victoria. You think you've won? You'll regret this. All of you will regret this. Security will escort you tomorrow morning to collect personal belongings. Nathan's voice was firm, brooking no argument. Don't make this worse than it already is. Richard's video feed cut out, leaving silence in its wake. Margaret Sterling addressed Marcus directly for the first time. Dr. Hayes, the board extends sincere apologies for the distress these events have caused you and your daughter. We value your contributions to Cross Medical, particularly regarding the Rodriguez merger. A formal letter attesting to your character and professional conduct will be provided for any legal proceedings that may arise regarding your daughter. We stand behind you completely. After the call ended, the room sat in stunned silence. Victoria's hands were shaking slightly, the first crack in her composure Marcus had seen. Nathan looked exhausted, his usual easy confidence dimmed by the ugliness they'd just witnessed. It's done. Victoria's voice was barely above a whisper. Richard's gone. Marcus felt neither triumph nor relief, just the hollowness that comes after surviving something that shouldn't have been necessary to survive in the first place. I need to check on Emma. He found her in the suite's living room, sketching in the art pad Victoria had bought her headphones on, oblivious to the corporate warfare that had been waged on her behalf. When she saw Marcus, she pulled off the headphones with a grin. "Daddy, look what I drew." The picture showed the Rodriguez family dinner tables full of people, kids playing warmth rendered in colored pencil with surprising skill for an 8-year-old. In one corner, Marcus stood with Victoria Emma between them, all three smiling. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Can we come back here sometime? I like the Rodriguez family. They were nice, like how I imagine Mommy's family would be if they weren't always busy." The observation carried no bitterness, just matter-of-fact assessment of reality. Marcus pulled Emma close, grateful beyond words that she'd been protected from the ugliness happening in conference rooms and board meetings. That evening, Victoria knocked on Marcus's door after Emma had fallen asleep. She looked different, vulnerable in ways her CEO armor usually prevented hair-down makeup worn off by the day's stress. "Can we talk? Actually talk, not about business or Rodriguez or Richard." They sat on the suite's balcony, San Antonio's lights spreading across the hill country like earthbound stars. The conversation started professionally but drifted into territory neither had planned to explore. Victoria confessed her loneliness the way wealth and power had isolated her from genuine human connection. Marcus shared his fears about failing Emma, about whether he could ever truly belong in the world Victoria inhabited. "You asked me once why I offered you the job." Victoria's voice was quiet, almost lost in the evening breeze. "I said we both needed a chance to be better. But that wasn't the whole truth." "What's the whole truth?" "I saw something in how you defended Emma, how you chose dignity over anger, how you rebuilt your life from nothing because you had no choice. You reminded me that there are things worth more than quarterly earnings and market share. You reminded me what courage actually looks like." Marcus turned to face her, seeing her clearly, maybe for the first time, not CEO Victoria Cross, but just Victoria, a woman who'd built an empire and discovered it couldn't fill the emptiness at its center. "I'm falling for you, Marcus. I know it's complicated. I'm your boss. We've known each other barely 3 months. The timing is terrible given everything with Richard, but I can't pretend this is just professional courtesy anymore." The admission hung between them, honest and terrifying. Marcus felt his own defenses crumbling, the walls he'd built after Rachel's death proving permeable to Victoria's genuine vulnerability. "I'm falling for you too. Probably started in that grocery store when you apologized to Emma, when I saw past the expensive clothes and harsh words to someone capable of real change. But Victoria, I have Emma to think about. I can't risk her heart if this is just, it's not just anything." Victoria moved closer, their faces inches apart. "I've never felt this with anyone. Not even Richard when we were engaged. I'm scared because I'm good at business and terrible at relationships. I don't want to hurt you or Emma." "Then let's be honest. Communicate. Take things slowly. Figure this out together instead of separately." "Slowly sounds good." She kissed him, then soft and tentative, a question more than a statement. Marcus responded with equal care, both of them navigating unfamiliar territory where professional boundaries dissolved and something more human emerged. When they pulled apart, foreheads touching, Victoria whispered words that landed with unexpected weight. "Emma's right, you know. Rachel would want you happy." "You heard that." "She told me the other day. Smart kid, sees things adults miss." They sat together as San Antonio's night deepened, not talking, just being present in a moment that felt like beginning rather than ending. Thursday brought final negotiations and formal signing ceremonies. The merger paperwork was executed with all the ritual corporate America brought to $50 million deals. Champagne flowed despite the morning hour. Dr. Rodriguez gave a speech about bridges between cultures, explicitly praising Marcus's role in making the impossible partnership real. In Spanish we say, "La confianza es como un papel una vez arrugado, nunca vuelve a su estado original." Trust is like paper once crumpled, it never returns to its original state. But Dr. Hayes showed us how to smooth the paper, find new ways to build trust across different languages and values. This merger succeeds because of him. After the ceremony, Dr. Rodriguez pulled Marcus aside for a private conversation. "Marcus, I have an offer. Rodriguez Medical, or rather Cross Rodriguez Medical Technologies, as will be called, needs someone to lead cultural integration between our companies. Based here in San Antonio, working with teams in both cities. 6-figure salary, full autonomy, chance to build something meaningful." The offer was generous, professionally exciting, financially transformative. It was also impossible. "I appreciate that more than you know, Dr. Rodriguez. But I'm exactly where I need to be. Emma has stability in Portland and Seattle. Victoria and I are figuring out something that matters. And Cross Medical gave me a second chance when I needed it most. Loyalty isn't just a word to me, it's how I show gratitude." Dr. Rodriguez nodded with understanding. "Smart man, loyalty is rare. But if circumstances change, the door stays open." The flight back to Seattle Friday afternoon felt different. Emma sat between Marcus and Victoria, chattering about the week's adventures. Victoria had rearranged her schedule to fly commercial with them rather than taking the company jet, choosing connection over convenience. As they landed and Seattle's skyline came into view, Marcus realized how much had changed in 5 days. Richard was gone, his threat neutralized. Jennifer had withdrawn her custody claim and tentatively rejoined their lives as family rather than adversary. The Rodriguez merger was complete, his role in that success undeniable. And Victoria represented possibilities Marcus hadn't dared imagine since Rachel's death. 6 months later, September, brought the formal merger completion ceremony. Cross Rodriguez Medical Technologies announced itself to the world with a gala at Seattle's Four Seasons, 200 guests, including Rodriguez executives who'd flown from San Antonio, board members, employees, and press coverage from medical technology journals. Marcus stood on stage in a suit that actually fit, purchased with salary that no longer required choosing between groceries and electricity. His title had evolved to Director of Cultural Integration, Southwest Operations. Victoria stood beside him as CEO Nathan, as COO Dr. Rodriguez, representing the Texas operations. Victoria's speech was polished but personal, acknowledging Marcus's contribution in ways that made his chest tight. This merger represents more than business expansion. It proves that with the right people, cultural differences become strengths rather than obstacles. Dr. Marcus Hayes didn't just bridge two companies, he bridged two philosophies, two approaches to business, two visions of what success means. Without him, we wouldn't be here tonight. When Marcus's turn came to speak, he looked out at the audience, employees who'd become colleagues, Rodriguez team members who'd become friends. Emma sitting in the front row beside Chloe, Nathan's daughter. Both girls wearing nice dresses and beaming with pride. Working with Rodriguez Medical taught me that excellence has no single definition. Anglo-American business culture values efficiency and decisive action. Hispanic-American business culture values relationships and community impact. Both are right. Both create value. The magic happens when we stop trying to convert each other and start learning from each other, when we build bridges instead of walls. He paused, finding Victoria's eyes in the crowd. 3 years ago, I lost everything that mattered except my daughter. I thought success meant clawing back what I'd lost: the title, the salary, the professional respect. But real success isn't recovering what you lost. It's discovering what you didn't know you needed. Family that chooses you. Work that matters. People who see your worth even when you can't see it yourself. The applause felt distant, less important than Emma's proud grin, or Victoria's smile, or the Rodriguez team's standing ovation. After the ceremony, Dr. Rodriguez approached once more with his standing offer: lead Southwest operations, relocate to San Antonio, build the cultural integration program from scratch. Once more, Marcus declined, though, with genuine appreciation for the opportunity. "I'm where I belong. But thank you for understanding what matters isn't just the work, it's the people you do it with." The reception continued long into the evening. Marcus found himself surrounded by colleagues. Rodriguez executives praising his work, industry journalists asking about the cultural integration model he'd developed. But his attention kept returning to Emma, laughing with Chloe and comparing sketches her childhood unfolding with the security and joy he'd fought so hard to provide. Sunday afternoon found them at Victoria's lake house on Lake Washington. Not a business gathering, but genuine chosen family: Marcus, Victoria, Emma, Nathan and his two teenagers, and unexpectedly Jennifer, who'd flown from Austin to begin rebuilding relationships she'd nearly destroyed. Emma and Chloe sketched by the dock while Nathan and Marcus manned the grill, engaging in the kind of easy male companionship Marcus hadn't experienced since his Oregon faculty days. Jennifer sat with Victoria on the patio, the two women navigating careful conversation about Emma, about Rachel's memory, about how to move forward without erasing the past. As sunset painted the lake in impossible colors, Marcus found himself standing beside Victoria, their hands linked where no one could see, choosing discretion while Emma adjusted to the changes reshaping their lives. "Move to Seattle. You and Emma both." Victoria's voice was quiet but certain. "There's an excellent Montessori school near Queen Anne. Emma would be with Chloe daily. And I want to wake up with you every morning, not just weekends and stolen evenings." Marcus had thought about this constantly over the past months, weighing Emma's need for stability against the relationship growing between him and Victoria. "That's a big step." "I know. No pressure. But Marcus, I want this to be real life, not business trips and long-distance phone calls. I want us to be an actual family, whatever that looks like." Marcus pulled her closer, the decision already made, even if the words took a moment to form. Emma needs stability, yes. But she also needs to see what healthy relationships look like, what it means when someone chooses us every day. She deserves to understand that family can grow, that loving someone new doesn't erase who we've lost. Is that a yes? That's a yes. We'll move to Seattle, build something real with you, figure out what comes next together. Victoria's kiss tasted like relief and promise, like beginning rather than ending. When they pulled apart, Emma was watching from the dock with Chloe, both girls grinning like they'd orchestrated this outcome all along. Emma ran up, wrapping her arms around both of them. "Does this mean we're moving near Victoria, and I can see Chloe all the time, and we'll be a family?" Marcus knelt to Emma's eye level, needing her to understand this completely. "We'll be a family. Not the same as with Mommy, because nothing can replace her, but a new kind of family. One that includes Victoria and Nathan and Chloe. Is that okay with you?" Emma's response was immediate and certain. "Mommy's in heaven watching us. She wants us happy. Victoria makes you smile. Different makes me feel safe. So yes, it's okay. It's good." The wisdom of 8-year-olds seeing clearly what adults complicated with fear and hesitation. That evening after dinner, around a long table filled with laughter and stories and the easy chaos of chosen family, Emma pulled out her sketchpad and drew while adults cleaned up. Marcus found the drawing later, all of them together by the lake house, detailed and careful. But above the scene, rendered in lighter pencil, Rachel with angel wings watching over them with an expression Emma had somehow captured, not sadness but approval, not possession but release. At the bottom, Emma had written in careful letters, "My family, all of them." Marcus showed Victoria the drawing later, after Emma was asleep in the lake house guest room, after Jennifer had driven back to her hotel with promises to visit monthly, after Nathan's kids had retreated to their rooms with phones and teenage self-absorption. "She's including Rachel, making room for everyone." Victoria studied the drawing, tears gathering in eyes that usually remained professionally dry. "She's wiser than both of us. Understands you don't have to choose between honoring the past and embracing the future. You can hold both if you're brave enough." They sat together on the deck, Lake Washington, reflecting stars and shore lights, the future unfurling with both certainty and mystery. Marcus thought about the grocery store encounter that had started this journey the moment Victoria's cruel words in Spanish had shattered assumptions on both sides. "You know what I've learned." Marcus broke the comfortable silence. "Success isn't recovering what you lost. It's discovering what you didn't know you needed." I spent 2 years trying to get back to who I was before Rachel died. But that person doesn't exist anymore. This person, the one who fixes things and speaks Spanish and loves you, he's who I became through loss. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's better than okay." Victoria turned to face him, fully moonlight catching the tears she wasn't hiding anymore. "I spent my whole life building an empire and wondering why I felt empty. Then you walked into my grocery store, challenged everything I thought about success and worth and what actually matters. You showed me that the right person isn't the one who makes life easier, it's the one worth fighting for, worth being better for, worth choosing every single day." The words hung between them, profound in their simplicity. These were the truths that mattered more than quarterly earnings or merger success or professional accolades. Family blood or chosen was what you built when everything else burned away. Love wasn't recovering what you lost, but having the courage to try again despite knowing how badly it could hurt. As they sat together under stars that had witnessed countless endings and beginnings, Marcus understood what Rachel had meant in her final lucid days when she'd made him promise to find happiness again. She hadn't wanted him frozen in grief, hadn't wanted Emma raised by a father too scared to move forward. She'd wanted this messy, complicated, real connection with someone who saw his worth and chose him anyway. The lake lapped against the shore with eternal patience. Seattle's lights twinkled across the water like promises. And somewhere between loss and redemption, between ending and beginning, Marcus Hayes and Victoria Cross discovered what they'd both been searching for without knowing how to name it: home.